Just a short little slideshow about a 2-week trip to London um, from January 9th through 23rd with Lama Kathy Wesley, Larry and Beth Keenan, Don Keenan, and we joined Jessica Sullivan, who lives in London, and Jay Sewell, who was also visiting. The place, we rented an Airbnb, 10 Westbourne Terrace, also known as 10 Westbourne Grove Terrace, also known as the bus stop across from the Waitrose on Porchester. Boy, the Waitrose had such beautiful produce, and the standard of food is much higher in London than it is in Dallas, Texas. Deepti was our Airbnb landlord, and I was in touch with her consistently. The place was lovely. That couch, that suede couch, was really very comfortable, and the way it was set up was very convenient. The living room areas and food areas were upstairs, and all the bedrooms and bathrooms were downstairs. There were a few glitches, but for the most part, it worked well, and it cost us much less than a hotel would, and also gave us the opportunity to make food. And I made breakfasts a lot. We started, this is from the time of James the First. This is an alleyway that was supposed to have been some of the inspiration for J.K. Rowling's Diagon Alley in the Harry Potter stuff. And on that first day, and also you can see in the where the lamp is, that's a little, the little icon thing is for to let the fire service you're paying know that this is your window. They wouldn't fight fires in a place that hadn't paid for it. And we got our tickets for Harry Potter. That was nice. Harry Potter was at the Palace Theatre, which was built by Richard Doyley Carte, producer of the Gilbert and Sullivan operas, and they commissioned the theater in the late 1880s. Then this is showing a typical day, which it wasn't always gray, but a lot of the time it was gray and moist. And our buses, the double-decker buses, and the cabs that we used frequently to get around. This looks like Regent Street. Okay, this is the theater I was talking about, the Palace Theater, where we saw the Harry Potter. Then the next day, we went to the Museum of London, which was a really great way to see what was going on in London. To the left is a Roman mosaic floor from early Londinium. The Romans were there from approximately 36 through approximately AD 400. So they occupied for a very nice long time. The second is a You and I Are Earth. You know, it's making a comment about the plague. And of course, 1661 was towards the end of the Great Plagues, but really incredible, you know. This game of human life it's a London game, and it's all the different London types of the time. And you get the little token there. It was very fun, also from that museum. This is a great picture of the Tower complex, of photos from Sky Garden. Larry took this, but we visited that the next day. Of course, we started the looking at the tower by looking at the Raven quarters. They take the ravens very seriously, and there is the theory that the entire country would collapse if the ravens were to leave the tower. So they're very good, and the ravens are crazy interesting with kids, and People love to mess with them. The tower has a lot of purposes. It's as a defensive fortress. It's a royal residence, or was for many years. It's the mint where coins were made up until the late 1700s, early 1800s. Zoo, the safe deposit vault for the crown jewels, and also, of course, a prison. They had, in the time we were there, a very nice reenactment, things going on where they interacted with the people going through. And this was interesting. This was one of the prisoners, was Hugh Draper of Bristow. And in 1561, he had been at the tower over 14 months, accused of sorcery, and he did an astrological chart. And just very nice graffiti on his cell wall. And there were lots of graffitis on the cell walls. Some of them from noteworthy people, some of them just very interesting. We got to see the changing of the guard at the tower. And this is the Chapel of St. John's at the tower. Many interesting and sad things happened there. It was actually decommissioned. It's actually the oldest church building in London, or in England. I think it's like 1061, 1081. It was built and commissioned, and it was decommissioned as a chapel and used to store parchments for hundreds of years, and then it was brought back and made a chapel again more recently. This is, after we'd left, we ate at a lovely place just outside, and this is out of the window of the place where we were eating an early dinner. And it's neat because it's the street style. It's what people of a certain age dress. It's a very, very tight, dark jeans, the pretty heavy boots, and parkas, And of course, that's London Bridge. One thing when we went to Trafalgar Square, Jessica told us about the lions at Trafalgar Square, that Sir Edwin Landseer, who was the most famous sculptor of his day, had not seen a lion for some time, and when he did his famous lions, he really didn't have any good source material, so he used his cat's paws. And cat's paws and lion's paws really do not look the same, but that is why the paws of the Trafalgar lions look so domestic cat-like, because that's what he used. Oh, it's cute. This is the British Library, which was absolutely fantastic. We went to see a Harry Potter History of Magic show. It's all the source material from parchments and early books and illuminated manuscripts that J.K. Rowling used in her construction of her world. There was an alchemical scroll that was absolutely fantastic. Things about werewolves and witches and potions. Very, very interesting. The library itself was a Monday, but it was just jammed with people. And they had all these great places to sit, but they were all taken. We had to really work to get a place to sit and have some tea. On the left, you see all those books. The middle of the British Library is a square column of books, and these are the books from George III's library. He was apparently a famous bibliophile and book collector, and this is part of his collection. The British Museum also has some of his books, but it was a great The building's very kind of modern and monolithic, but then the core of it is George the Third's book collection, and it really grounds it. It's very interesting. I'd love to go back there. Here we are waiting for the bus. We would take usually the 7 or the 23, and then we would either take that the whole way if we could, or take the 10 across. This evening we went to the Wanamaker Theater and the Globe Complex on the south side of the Thames, and we took the Millennium Bridge, which you see there on the right, which goes straight from St. Paul's to the new Tate complex, and the Globe Theater and the Wanamaker, the complexes there. And Jay there at the bottom, that's just the view from the table. And it was a lovely, lovely meal, lovely evening. The Wanamaker the play was by candlelight, all natural, on seating that was as close as they could get it to the actual way these Thameside theaters worked in about the time of Elizabethan England, contemporary to Shakespeare. This is from the Sky Garden. The Sky Garden is on the 35th floor, maybe, of this skyscraper, and it's got huge vaulting views, and this is the Shard. The Londoners like to name all the big buildings. There's the Gherkin, the Walkie Talkie building. Everything's got a name. This is the Temple of Mithras in the Bloomberg building. It's from about AD 300. And Bloomberg, it's also the site of one of Thomas More's houses. He had a London house that was at this site. But it was neat. They had mist, and it was very theatrical and very high dollar. Okay, next we had the Ceremony of the Keys. We went back in the evening at 9 o'clock to the Tower, and the Ceremony of the Keys is an ancient ritual held every evening at the Tower of London when the main gates are locked for the night. It's said to be the oldest military ceremony in the world and is the best known ceremonial tradition at the Tower. It was very cool because since Jessica works, as a docent, basically for the City of London, it was just really fun to be with her doing that. And also, part of her knowing her way around, I'd like to tell you about, on the left, we're in a Wetherspoons. That's not this pub's name, but it is a chain of pubs all over London. They're all branded and presented completely differently in each location, but they don't mind if you use their restrooms, and they're just swell. It's very consistent, and you can always go somewhere to sit and have a beer or some tea. Then we went to the Victoria and Albert Museum, and here we are enjoying the most popular exhibit in the South Asia section. It's called Tipu's Tiger. It's a really famous automata of a tiger mauling an officer of the East India Company. The Victoria and Albert Museum had many wonders. You can see Dale Chihuly, huge sculpture hanging from the middle. The exhibit quality and design of the displays was really phenomenal. The layout of the place was funky. It was really hard to get around, but fascinating and tip-top all the same. It's just a beautiful place. I had to ask where something was, and The docent just looked at me and then she goes, "Follow me." And she takes the next 15 minutes walking us to the place because she knew we were never going to find it by her directions. And it was a little subtle. This is one of the highlights of the museum. It's considered to be the first museum cafe. Morris, Gamble, and Pointer rooms. From the left is the designed by Gamble, the middle one designed by William Morris, and the one on the right designed by Pointer. Beautiful arts and crafts styling. These beautiful mosaics were in the portico, but then became covered over and came inside. Beautiful Tara, 1600, 1700 AD from Mala, Nepal. The reading room at the Victoria and Albert is really wonderful. And they had a top-notch collection of very, very old stained glass stuff from, 1100, 1200, 1400. Beautiful. This is the back, or I guess the entrance, because we came by subway. We really didn't see the entrance until we left. And here's Larry modeling our purchase, which is an artisanal woolen scarf, and an example of the extraordinary textile holdings of the museum. There were so many great designs and great source materials for any designer. Really fabulous, fabulous stuff. Then the next day, before we went to see Hamilton, we had a little time, so Jessica took us for a walk. We went to Victoria Station and saw and we had it's not called a pot pie. What's it called, Larry? It's that little hand pies.
Pasty.
We had a pasty. Don't say pasty, they get upset. Pasty. We had a pasty. I had a lamb and crushed pea pasty. And also, we went to Buckingham Palace. This is Buckingham Palace. The monument in front, on the left, was built by Albert for his mother, Victoria. Then we went to see Hamilton. This is a night shot, but we went to a matinee. I saw it at night. It looks prettier at night. And they're still working on it. They did extensive renovations to the theater for the show. Hamilton was absolutely superb. I just wanted to mention, this is a picture of King George III from the National Portrait Gallery. And there is the lovely fellow who plays him, Michael Gibson. And his resemblance to King George was really astonishing. It's not perfect. It doesn't show perfectly here, but believe me, while he was doing it, he just looked exactly like the shot on the left. And this is the curtain call. It was really phenomenal. The Shakespearean training and tiny micro pauses really added a lot to the ability to immediately get the very dense and quick lyrics. Next, we went to the British Museum, and if the heart of Bloomsbury is the British Museum, then the British Museum reading room was until recently at the very heart of the heart. This central dome chamber is only 2 feet less in diameter than the Pantheon in Rome. And it hasn't been open for about 12 years. They can't really figure out what to do with it. But you can see the way the enclosure of the complex has been done is so extremely beautiful. And the glass and the atmosphere at different times of the day is so fabulous. And then they still keep a lot of what they call the Enlightenment rooms. That is the British Museum as it was in the 19th century, when it was just the hotbed for all the archaeological and all the stuff they were carting off from all the territories and possessions. So many things you can't possibly, every 3 feet there would be something else that was astonishing to look at or that you had seen for many years, and just really super famous. That's a caryatid from the Parthenon, I believe. Lots of school groups, and this was fun. It's like a crocodile cult costume, what you wore if you were in a crocodile cult. And this was from early Roman holdings. A very famous bronze bust of, I think it might be Augustus, I'm not certain. The only reason its extant is considered a masterpiece is that the head was taken off and buried as a way of disrespecting it, and that was the only, and then they forgot about it, so which was the way it was preserved. The Egyptian holdings are super duper world famous. It is the place to go. This is really interesting. The Portland vase. They're still not exactly sure how the vase was done, whether it was carved or molded. Josiah Wedgwood examined it very carefully, and but it's really also famous for an Irish student breaking it into all these pieces, just taking it off the pedestal and crushing it on the floor. He was fined £3, but the guy was had real problems. But obviously they put it back together. It is gloriously, beautifully done. I should have taken a closer shot of it. The British Museum had, I thought, absolutely lovely lunch. Those olives on that table were delicious, and you can get a latte and good stuff everywhere. This is, the one on the left is the first known statue of copulation. And it's 50,000 years old, and it is phallic from any direction you care to look at it, and very interesting. And the other thing is what are these chess pieces called? The Lithgow?
Lewis.
The Lewis chess pieces. It's antique walrus ivory that was carved into these incredibly whimsical pieces that weren't intended to be whimsical, but they're really adorable. This is a Lohan from about 11 or 1200, a very, very powerful ceramic, larger than life ceramic, Chinese meditators. Again, the interior is so beautiful, and the light changes through the day. And here we are leaving. I would love to go back. We went to the National Portrait Gallery the next day, and this is William Hogarth. You know him best for his moral series like A Harlot's Progress, A Rake's Progress, and Marriage a la Mode. He did these engraving series, some of which were tinted and colored and some of which were not. Knowledge of his work is so pervasive that satirical political illustrations in his style are referred to as Hogarthian. And this modest self-portrait shows Hogarth painting Thalia, the muse of comedy. Okay, no big deal, but they did an X-ray analysis, and underneath this picture is another painting of his dog pissing on a pile of old master paintings. Guy had a really subtle, interesting sense of humor. He was asked to provide this painting for the British Academy, and that was his way of making a comment. Again, this was the portrait gallery's place to kind of get a cup of tea or sit and talk, or just a lovely, uh, less formal lunchroom. This portrait of Elizabeth I is one of the very, very few images that were done from her live in life. So probably very, very accurate depiction of what she looked like. This was they had a lovely lunchroom with a super duper view at the portrait gallery, and we did that, and it was lots and lots of fun. Actually, I think Don had the best food that day. It looked like pate, and they called it a rillette, but it wasn't. It was good. This was Larry's favorite. The guy, Sir Thomas Challoner, he's snapping his fingers. What looks like a mudra at the bottom, he's snapping his fingers to indicate that earthly pleasures are transitory and that our life passes, very, very quickly. It's just really, really nice. And the next day, on Sunday, we went to a ultra traditional London Sunday roast. So we went to Hawksmoor, and Hawksmoor gave us roast and veggies and Yorkshire pudding and like treacle for dessert. It was really, really fun. After that, we went to London County Hall, where they were having a staging of Agatha Christie's play, Witness for the Prosecution. You may be familiar with the Charles Laughton, Marlene Dietrich film. It was lovely. And the county hall was closed by Margaret Thatcher in the late 80s, but it's a beautiful venue to have a courtroom drama. And it was very effective. Jessica and Jay actually sat in the jury, which was lots of fun. Our next excitement the next day was to have a classic tea at the Marriott County Hall. And here is actually, I don't know how we managed this, but we got a photo of the climax of that tea, which was Jessica Sullivan explaining to Don Keenan precisely how one does and does not eat a scone. And it's very important to open your scone, to slather on the strawberry jam first, liberally, so the clotted cream has the jam to adhere to. She takes this very seriously, and it was super fun. After that, we walked to the Tattersall Castle, which is her father's favorite bar. It's a boat that is permanently docked on the Thames and has a killer view of, the London Eye, which is the Ferris wheel thing, and that whole area of across the Thames. It was a great place to have tea, coffee, and they had rhubarb crumble. That was really lovely. Then we walked along the riverfront, and that's Big Ben. You can see all the scaffolding. It is going to be worked on until, I guess it's a couple of more years, 2019, 2020, something like that. But we were on our way to see Lumiere, which is a festival of lights that's throughout London, and one of the most famous of the Lumiere things is they take Westminster Abbey. Westminster Abbey?
Yeah.
Westminster Abbey, and they color it. I mean, this is colored lights. And at the bottom, the saints have been recolored to be the modern martyrs, one of which is Martin Luther King Jr. It's absolutely gorgeous, and the colors are continually changing. And here's the people. Everybody is like in awe looking at it. It draws a huge crowd. And there are other things. On the right is another part of Winchester Cathedral, another of the openings. And then the one on the left is so cool. It's done with water bottles that have color, and you can't see it, but there are all these bicycles, and you get on the bicycle, and whether the colors all show or not is how hard you're bicycling. And there's a guy saying, stop bicycling now, and you let it go down to nothing, and then he'll say, just bicycle a little bit, and it slowly the colors come into it again. It's a whole thing of how power, by bicycling or anything, you generate power. It was really fun. And here again is another of Larry's nice pictures from the Sky Garden of St. Paul's. And St. Paul's is very relentless about not letting you photograph in there. So the only thing I have is this picture. I climbed to the top, which was great fun, and took a selfie. The other is just a typical cab ride thing. Cabs are wonderful. They're boxy, and you can have a fair amount of space, but it's very easy to lose your gloves in cabs, and several of us lost gloves. Walking around, one of the things that was very noteworthy was the Harrods Food Hall. Okay, Harrods is in this over-the-top Egyptian motif, right? Because the guy is an Egyptian, but the food halls are in the classic style. They're very historic, and it must be 10 or 12 different enormous rooms just jammed full of the most exquisite food. There's a coffee area, a tea area, a wild game area, a chocolate area. It's just enormous. This is the caviar area with the chart of how much it is for all these different kinds of caviar. But beautiful. Okay, and then it was, even thinking about the trip, Larry was excited about the idea of going to a place where he could get himself some hats. He loves hats. Jessica took us to this street, and you see this statue here of this guy. That's Beau Brummel. So she brings us to the street, to the Piccadilly Arcade, where there's an actual statue, erected to a man of style. And so Larry starts his search for his hats. He finds them. There's this wonderful, he wanted a top hat, but they were 475 pounds.
You wanted a top hat.
Well, anyway, but he put one on. And this Bates Place, 1898, not only had beautiful caps, it also had, had a beautiful cat that after he died, he was stuffed, and they made him a little top hat, and he's a big part of their branding. So there you go. That's really the end of this tiny, tiny little selection of just a few of the things we did. But we had a great time. We hope to do it again. And thanks for your patience. Bye-bye.